All right, so all new episode of the SLCEcast with Timberly Vogel and Billy Harris from Laramie Human Rights Network. Timberly and Billy, how are you?
Doing
Good. Yeah,
good. How
we're
about you?
really well.
Oh, good, good. Just trying to get through this semester, figure out if it's ever going to start in person or what's going on, or if we're just looking at more of this. Um, yeah, we'll see. So I just want to get right into talking about what is Laramie Human Rights Network. Sorry, I keep wanting to just call it Laramie Humans, and I was going to get to that later, but maybe I'm letting the cat out of the bag because I think that's how everyone I've heard refer to it
Yeah,
talks about it.
absolutely.
So Laramie Humans, Laramie Human Rights Network. What is it? What do y'all do?
Uh, Laramie Human Rights
Yeah.
Network is basically a grassroots movement that started in Laramie directly in response to the murder of George Floyd, and was originally a series of demonstrations to stand in solidarity with really all of the victims of police brutality across the nation. And then it sort of developed into demonstrations that highlighted and educated about the criminal justice issues we face in Laramie and Wyoming as a whole that are sort of pushed under the rug a little bit. So yeah, we're just a community organization that's dedicated to addressing and highlighting and educating about criminal justice concerns and patterns of discrimination, as well as promoting community engagement in a lot of different facets and helping address some of the real issues that plague people in Laramie and across Wyoming, like mental illness, drug crisis, housing insecurity, food insecurity, all types of things that ultimately tend to conglomerate on one another and turn people to crime sometimes. So addressing the issue of the overuse and disproportionate impacts of the criminal justice system from sort of a bunch of different angles.
Yeah. I think it's tough sometimes when people that don't really get what you're working for, they want to break everything out into a separate issue. Every little thing has its own box, right? But all of those are connected. It's like one domino. You move it, and a bunch of other things fall. So that's great that y'all are kind of having a broad approach to it. It sounds like, but everything got started this summer, right? With the protests and the demonstrations that we saw all over the country, and I think there were probably a lot of people in Laramie that were kind of wondering right at first, oh, is this going to happen here in Laramie? And it did, and it was big, and it's been big. Tell us a bit about just what that first kind of meeting or whatever. How did everything come together? How did the right people find each other? Take us a little bit behind the scenes of how that stuff works.
So I was living with some people who had some pretty unfortunate views of all the George Floyd protests happening across the country, and just like spewing a lot of hate, being really bigoted. And I realized that there was a larger community, and still is a larger community in Laramie, that just kind of turns a blind eye to issues like this. And especially when we've had instances of police brutality in Laramie with the murder of Robbie Ramirez, there's always the dismissal of it, like, oh, it didn't happen here, so why are you protesting it? Or why are they protesting a murder in Minneapolis and all these other cities? So I kind of wanted to let that community know that there was people in Laramie that would stand in solidarity with victims of police brutality and George Floyd specifically. So I think it was a Tuesday. I just posted excuse me. I just posted an Instagram story that was like, hey, I'm going to march from First Street Plaza to 15th and back, just to kind of spur some momentum for this discussion here in town. So please join me if you'd be willing and able. And the first protest was, pretty shocking. I posted that. How we kind of got the ball rolling as Laramie Humans, because it was just kind of a post that I did. Timber DM'd me or commented on it.
Yeah. Laramie Skate.
Skate Laramie.
Skate Laramie like reposted the Instagram story, and I didn't know Billy. I followed Skate Laramie though, and so I reached out, and prior to that, I had been organizing with some of the people that I had organized with in different capacities in the university, and just trying to figure out, what we could do and what was going to be the most efficient, thing that we could do in Laramie, and to drawing attention to this issue and helping it in any tangible way that we could. And so when I saw Billy's post, I was just like, hey, this is a cool idea. I've been a part of some marches in Laramie that weren't very effective in doing really anything and popular in any capacity. So I like this idea, and I asked if he wanted to maybe work together in expanding it into some fundraising that we could do for a multitude of organizations across the nation and the state. And we decided that we would meet the first day of the march, not expecting hundreds of people to come. It was really hard to find each other at first, but we met at the first march, and then really just hit it off in terms of organizing and figuring out how to take this community support and momentum that obviously continued to grow throughout the first 2 weeks exponentially, and then figuring out, what's the most benefit that we can provide to these organizations in places like Minneapolis that are sort of in the muck of it, but by no means in a vacuum in terms of who these issues impact. So from then on, we just sort of kept meeting. It was just Billy and I, and Rihanna was there too. Sort of just doing the marches every day, and seeing that the community that we were trying to dig into was just growing and a lot bigger than I think any of us had ever imagined. And then we started fundraising. We sold some local art, and people just gave donations, and so since then it's sort of grown. The team of people that sort of meet on the ground every day has grown by we have 7 or 8 people now that meet almost daily, and just in terms of figuring out our next steps. And obviously demonstrations aren't daily anymore, but sort of doing the more behind the scenes work that doesn't really get marketed as much. But the beginning was sort of a fluke, just Instagram stories.
All
so weird.
Perfectly somehow.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think it's easy to get, at least for me, cynical sometimes with social media activism. But I think we have to remind ourselves, and you're doing a great job of that, of you don't know, one message, it hits the right people. Who knows what happens next? So I think that's really cool that you all connected that way. I think, an unfair criticism that gets lobbed at folks demonstrating quite a bit is that that's all they're doing, right? That's all somebody sees driving by. And so they maybe make an assumption that's all that's going on. You said you have a group of people meeting every day, or pretty much every day, working on some other things. What do people not see? What are those things that you all are, proud of, or just working on, or whatever? What's going on behind the scenes that's maybe leading to some change?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff we've been working on is sort of contacting local city and county representatives to sort of do some advocacy for actual policy changes that we'd like to see in the community. So we've been going to city council meetings, having meetings with individual councilors and county commissioners, just sort of discussing different things that we think could benefit the community, make the community feel safer, and sort of tone down policing and sort of reinterpret policing. And then also we were doing some stuff with education. So we've been doing infographics. We had a literature club for a couple weeks that we're kind of retooling right now, but just getting people engaged in a Zoom call with an article every week, sort of stuff like that.
Yeah, and we're also working closely with the ACLU in Cheyenne, and they're helping us with a lot of legal lingo and things that we're just not experts at, in terms of just getting more information from the city. We're also having those individual meetings with the police chief and the sheriff's department before that resignation happened or was announced. And beyond that, we're also organizing pretty thoroughly with like groups, similar grassroots organizations around the state. So we've been in contact with some people organizing in Jackson Hole, briefly with some people in Buffalo, some people in Cheyenne. And so working with those groups across the state to figure out a more comprehensive way and maybe a more powerful and efficient way to go to the state with the ACLU mapping and sort of figuring out how to put all of these goals in sort of a complete and nice little package. Yeah, something that seems like it's not just a bunch of these, you know, random groups sending the same, but like worded a little bit different. Yeah, legitimizing these like statewide concerns in a way that also highlights that it's not just, you know, the college town of Laramie or like the ski town of Jackson caring about it, but it's really like a lot of it's a multitude of pockets of people from across the state having the same concerns. So that's a lot. It's a whole bunch of conversations and trying to get into people's ear, and also sort of what you hinted at, like describing, or I guess going more in depth about what we actually are and what we stand for and what we care about in the community, because I think it really is easy. And we've heard this from like even city council members being like, well, you know, when you see the demonstrations and you hear the chants or you see the signs, it's just not really clear what you all are even talking about. And so, but after these conversations, it's like we have a lot of the same concerns and you know, ideas for how to improve the community. So it's a lot of that, you know, just like explaining what Laramie Humans is and what we stand for and who Laramie Humans are, because we definitely started as not an organization with a name. It was just like, we're just going to use this community momentum that we were able to sort of garner through social media. And then it got to the point where like those community members were like, do you guys have a name or like a page or somewhere we can contact you? And it was like, okay, now we need to think of a name, right? So yeah, it's just a bunch of moving the ball slowly but surely towards all of these goals and sort of addressing, you know, like we talked about the multitude of these issues and how intertwined they are, talking to all of those separate individuals, as well as like community organizations that we're trying to promote and help out, whether that's through volunteering or expanding their services, to work in conjunction with the police or whatever capacity that comes in. It's a lot of those conversations, just like picking everybody's brain about addressing and solving these issues that we all care about.
So it sounds like you've met with just a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, you know, I know the numbers in Wyoming, so you've probably met with folks on both sides of the aisle. In general, I don't want to get into, you know, specifically calling people out necessarily, unless you feel like it, but that's not what I could do and stay employed. But I'm just curious, like, what's the reception been like if you call up a city councilor or a state representative or something and say, I want to talk about police violence and some reform here? Has it been defensive or opening and just want to hear? Like, how would you describe it?
It's tough because there's obviously some support just for like the general idea of improving policing. But a lot more of like the nitty gritty sort of specific things that we'd like to see, or like specific policy measures, we've had a lot more difficulty with. Either there's not support for it, or the people who are in support for it kind of don't work for it. They don't want to push the ball forward.
Yeah, it's a lot of I think it might be virtually split in half in terms of people in support, people not in support. And I think the hardest part to address thus far has been the people who are in support, but ultimately, you know, face this monster that we all see living in Wyoming of having this mega identity as like a red state or a conservative state who, you know, when like police reform has sort of turned into this like totally polarizing issue of like, you can't really even discuss it without like identifying yourself on the side of the spectrum,
abolitionist,
right? So that's really been, we've like definitely just like met people who are like, or talked to other representatives who are like, these representatives aren't going to talk to you. Like they don't care. Like they like verbatim, they're like, they don't like you. They're not going to meet with you. So that's been interesting. But most of the conversations, I mean, especially with I would say like the law enforcement representatives and officials that we've met with, those conversations seem to be the most fruitful in just that, like, they seem to not really have the concern of like the representatives at like the city or county level of like, I don't want to lose the vote. It's sort of more of like, they have the power and like influence ultimately to make these changes. And I think that they truly care about the perception of their agencies, like from the community. And so those conversations, but still like obviously reluctant, like when the, I guess, tone or mantra is like under the umbrella of defund the police, I think that's just immediately like turns some people off. And so a lot of these conversations have been sort of, like I said, just going into the nitty gritty of like what that really means and what the purpose of it is, and not just being like, we hate all police officers, but like defunding the police really means like community reinvestment, right? And sort of describing that. But we've definitely been faced with a lot of the, I think, bureaucratic mess of like people pointing fingers to who can make change and who's responsible. And that's been really frustrating, especially when you're like talking to your elected officials that like you voted for in the mind that they would like represent you and speak for you, even if they thought that they wouldn't win the vote from the other representatives. But you know, outside of that frustration, I think that we just push through all of those conversations and like go to whoever the finger was pointed to, and sort of hold people accountable along the way of being like, this is what we were told, this is what you said you would do, and sort of going through those hoops. But overall, it's been a mess. I don't think anyone at any level of government in Laramie or Albany County as a whole really anticipated something like this to ever happen. And for especially like for this long of a time, I think most demonstrations and big events that happen in Laramie are usually pretty short, and they get waited out. You know, it's just they drag their feet until whether it's students that move or graduate, or whether it's just people who lose steam. We've definitely, and like they've admitted to us, like we've definitely, you know, sort of caught some people on their heels in terms of addressing these serious issues that for us, we assumed would be like knowledge to everyone, that like things are going on in the city that they run or the county they run. But we've been faced with a lot of like, I've never had to deal with this before. I've never thought about. A lot harder. Yeah, we're making people's jobs hard, which that also contributes to why they don't want to talk to us anymore, because they're like, we don't want to get into the weeds. They like, and this is like, oh, it's insane, some of the conversations we've had of like, I've never thought critically about things that are presented in front of the council or county board. Like, what?
Let those grants slip right through.
Wow.
But support and like outright not support, it's probably about even.
Yeah. So it comes at an interesting time, the way this movement kind of lines up with a big election. I'm curious if you all have plans or doing anything that's election focused at all.
We've definitely been doing some voter outreach during the primary. We had like a little voter march, just like one of our normal demonstrations, but just to the courthouse to vote early. We posted some district and ward information like maps and sample ballots for the primary, and we'll probably do that for the general as well.
And what's Nate's organization?
Better Wyoming. Better Wyoming's registering voters during the beginning of our protests at First Street Plaza. So just things along those lines, getting people registered first off, making sure people know who they're voting for and whatever district that they're in.
And yeah, including Better Wyoming, there's also like Laramie Youth Voter Guide that has sort of stemmed from this, and they're basically like an organization of young people who ask all of the candidates that are willing to answer these prompts, just questions that younger demographics, I guess, are more likely to care about. So we've done a lot of work with them closely and promoting them. And a lot of the members of each of these groups like overlap into these other groups in Laramie. So that makes it really nice to just be able to like have one person doing this page and another. Yeah, it's super easy. But beyond that, yeah, I think we're going to definitely continue that into November, and especially, oh my God, yeah, there's a lot of voting things. And it's really, I don't really know if there's much more we can do besides like educating people on if they're allowed to vote here, especially like the student population that maybe has 2 different addresses. And then beyond that, just making sure that people are, you know, no matter what side you're voting for, that they're making an educated vote, because electoral politics definitely has value to an extent.
Yeah, definitely isn't our focus.
Yeah, it's not our biggest thing.
Yeah.
But it is important, and we've definitely like tried to promote that, because it's like, if you care enough about these issues to be in the streets marching, hopefully you care enough about them to like vote and sort of do the you know, the not very fun and exciting part of this work, right? The civic duty part. It's grueling, and it's definitely not our favorite part of it, but you know, a combination of the two is detrimental and totally necessary for any of these changes that we want to make.
Yeah, totally. I want to go back to stuff this summer, because I just, you know, I've heard and read bits and pieces about different things that happen. There was some significant, at least I would call it that, just, you know, by viewing it kind of secondhand, significant kind of resistance, or folks that seemed like they were trying to be, they gave me the impression anyhow of trying to be intimidating, trying to look scary, trying to look tough. What do you all feel like when those folks show up, or like, how do you deal with that?
It's just kind of bizarre. It's not like we don't feel intimidated. It's just another thing to think about, because we're organizing a group of individuals who may or may not be put off by an individual carrying an AR-15 or like a pistol or whatever.
But they're also like, we've made it abundantly clear at the beginning of, especially when we started facing like armed counter protesters, we've from the beginning had the sentiment like, we're peacefully protesting, we're not here to engage in these like, I don't know, culture wars, if you want to call it that, or just these weird interactions that are like distracting from what we're really trying to do when we have demonstrations. So it was super beneficial to just be surrounded by community members that were there to truly stand for something, and understood that the peacefulness from our side was absolutely necessary to our success, because all of those people that came out with weapons or the coal rolling trucks or whatever it came to be, they weren't standing for anything except like to stand against us and to distract us and, you know, try to ruffle feathers. And so it was super, super, I guess, reassuring that the community that we had with us was, you know, everyone knew what was going on and how to act and respond and to de-escalate. But yeah, it was honestly the first time I saw people with like in the beds of their trucks with like paramilitary gear and AR-15s just like circling the block around us. I was a little freaked out. Well, just because I was like, well, what is it like? What? I don't understand. Like, I wasn't scared of the people, but I was just like, I don't really know. I guess more confused. Like, I don't really know what point you're trying to make. Right. And that just continued to grow. And we definitely had some people like get out of their cars and yell like in the middle of Grand, just like, get out of the roads and like get a job and all these things. And
always get a job.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things like Billy and I would try to respond, like be there in front so like people would know to keep walking, but we really didn't even need to be. Like, people knew that those people just wanted attention and to disrupt, and we had a purpose for being there and a reason, and everyone really understood that. But we've definitely had some close encounters with some very agitated people. There was the truck that drove through the group at the corner of Grand and 3rd, and he like ran over a bike. And like I only saw, that was the one march I didn't go to, so I like saw videos of it, and I don't know, maybe you can speak on it more of like.
I mean, literally just antagonistic
Yeah,
behavior.
he drove
it was
over the
just
double yellow.
over the double yellow back into the group of people, slowly, for the only purpose to piss people off, which he obviously did.
Right.
And then also,
The
separate
gun
instance,
guy
the guy unholstered his gun and
got out of the car, got out of his truck.
Yeah, we had some people around who knew how to de-escalate to a certain extent, get him back in his truck and get him the hell out of there. But
yeah, and then we've had tons of people, obviously, not only just in the beds of their trucks with AR-15s, but there's this one person who comes to the demonstrations almost regularly, and he'll have his pistol on his dashboard, driving by us really slow, and just the strange, just you try to interact or talk to these people, and they're just irate from the get-go, and it's I don't really understand. Some of them frame it as I'm frustrated that you're on Grand for 30 minutes and you're making my drive home a little slower.
what do we call enthusiastic traffic? I don't know.
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, just people who love traffic. They love driving.
People who love because they really they would frame it like that, and then they would do circles around us and
just
be
go.
It's dude, and every block in Laramie, I'm pretty sure it connects. I know that you can take any other road.
Just Ivinson's also an
Garfield goes right
if you had to go from one side of Laramie to the other, no matter where you were starting, that's not a long trip.
Nah, not at all. Not at all. So the counter protesters, and I think, the guns settle down quite a bit. It's mostly just people now when we demonstrate, coming by in their diesel trucks and blowing smoke. And then there was this whole, I don't know if we want to get into it, but there's this whole group that started on Facebook, and in conjunction with the American Legion, called Albany County Love America. And they started this private Facebook group, just sort of ragging on us and plotting.
A lot of threats.
Yeah, a lot of threats. A lot of threats directly to Laramie humans and what we were doing, and then just generic, homophobic and xenophobic and racist, just sort of mess that you get from that side of Facebook. I think a lot of memes like that, and also very stark anti-mask, anti-vax. It's hard to say together now. They're all the same. But just people that were sort of just mad at the world and everything that we were standing for, which was one standing against police brutality, and then it sort of, when the mask discussion and the mask ordinance came to city council, then they were starkly not for mask wearing because COVID is a hoax, and sort of that stuff. So they've started physically demonstrating at the same time as us and in front of city council with us, and have sort of started to try to fill in some public comment periods alongside us, which it's cool to see other people caring about an issue, whether they stand with us or against us. But I think the most frustrating part is that when you go through their page or talk to any of them, sort of what everybody else we've interacted with, they don't stand for something. They're just don't like us and don't like what we're doing. So it's been frustrating, especially when it's just personal attacks and I don't know, them trying to cyberbully us on this Facebook group. It's so weird. But it gives you a laugh for a few minutes, which is valuable to an extent.
Yeah, I'd imagine more than anything, sometimes it's just a shock, because you're working with a lot of folks that's never going to come up for.
Yeah.
That you could just interact and be cool, and that's that. But when all of a sudden that pops up, it's just distracting.
It really is. It's strange.
I think it says something about you all and about your group, that you can be faced with somebody that's agitated and holding a gun, and you can talk to them or do whatever else to calm down the situation, and then the situation ends with people going their separate ways. And that leads back to what you're working for to begin with, right? Is there are different ways to do things. I think like you mentioned earlier, defund the police just as a statement can mean a lot of different things with different people using it, for one. So then it's hard for people to maybe interpret, do these people want to defund everything? Do they want to abolish the police? Or do they want changes in in tactics and training and other things like that. So maybe tell folks a little bit more about where Laramie Humans falls on that. What are you really looking for? What are you talking about if somebody says defund the police? I don't know, you haven't said that language in reference to your own organization, but it comes up a lot. So I just wanted to touch on that.
It's definitely so. Again, it comes back to the definition of it, but we're all for community reinvestment of police funds. So taking money from the public safety budget and giving it to socially oriented, like, community organizations.
Right. And that idea stems from Laramie is just not a place with a ton of violent crime, and that's like publicly accessible information to an extent. It's not very easy to find, but when you look at that and you know that, and then you see that the police budget comprises of almost 25% of the entire city budget, and that's police, not just public safety, right?
Yeah.
It's just police. You haven't done budget research in a while, thank God.
It's like the whole thing. It's like 17 actually,
yeah,
or whatever.
There's a lot of like, again, like pointing fingers elsewhere. But anyway, there's a pie chart and shows that it's just an exuberant amount of money. And when you think about Albany County having the highest rate of food insecurity in the state and having an extreme problem, and this is information from the sheriff and the police chief of like, majority of their calls are emergency detentions or welfare checks for people in mental crisis or drug crisis. And so when you think about that and you look at the training that the police in Albany County and Laramie do specifically, they're just not overwhelmed. There's an overwhelming amount of them that aren't trained to deal with these things. And so when 80% of your calls are dealing with a population that the police aren't trained for us, it makes sense to not give the police more training to like add more to their plate, but like reassess what we have police for and what they're trained to address and what they are good at addressing, and helping for the community, because they of course like serve a purpose in the community and they're valuable, but they, for a large population of people that they interact with at a high rate, are not the most well suited. And so defunding the police and some of the conversations that we've had with people is implementing mental health professionals into dispatcher services, so that it's not always someone with a bulletproof vest and a gun going to a welfare check. And it's also, you know, when you drive down Grand and you see the 3 like speed traps along the way, when those police aren't, you know, on a call and addressing any type of risk of a violent crime, do they really need to be in this paramilitary garb that is extremely daunting for many people? And it's also it's a direct result of like the war on drugs and like this over criminalization of drug use and abuse and poverty and sort of all these issues like housing insecurity, food insecurity, all of these things that they were never benefited by police having more like uses
gear,
of force or gear or protection, or like this image that made them look more terrifying. That just, you know, gave them more ways to criminalize these people. And so it's just sort of undoing all of these historical patterns that have been set into place by previous administrations that criminalized social issues that we could easily put money towards and like give people the help that they really need. So I think a big one in Laramie, and one that we've had most of our conversations I think stem around, is getting professionals and specialists trained in these fields that can keep people in drug crisis or having a mental illness crisis, keep them out of the detention center or out of Ivinson, because largely that's what happens if anyone gets called, if the police are called on anyone with a mental health crisis and Ivinson doesn't have room for them, then they are forced to go to the detention center, and that's an even more traumatizing place. and the police aren't suited for it. They're not trained for it. They don't know what to do. And that's word from the Dale Stalder and Dave O'Malley. Like, they know that their agencies are not fit for this. And so it's just like, you meet them at that point, and then it's sort of like, we're pushing for the next step. Like, it's great that you've realized this, right? So let's talk about how we can make like a tangible change.
Individuals who would be ending up in your detention center.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like having more tools to address the problem is always good. Like, where do you go wrong there? I don't get the resistance to that. Like,
I think it's a lot. I mean, the police culture is kind of permeated, and with like the whole Blue Lives Matter sentiment, it's kind of permeated past a reasonable sense of what policing is. So, and what it's supposed to do. And it's kind of embraced this protective military presentation of police officers, when in reality, that's the opposite of what communities like ours need.
Right. And I think it also, like, in this past summer, these sentiments being stated alongside Black Lives Matter and this sort of movement that I think unnecessarily has become political. It's just another sort of like easy way to put that on a side of a political spectrum that you don't align with. And so like any type of or form of like identity politics, it's like, if that's on the other side of things, you're obviously going to go into any conversation about it being against it, even though it's most likely like because you don't quite understand what it's about wholly. But I definitely do think that there is a hint of at least some of the conversations that we've had that are in that don't agree with what we're doing, largely just don't agree with Black Lives Matter and the sentiment that movement's trying to make. And so I'll call a kettle black. It's definitely just a little bit of racism, like sort of being mixed in with this, because for some reason, whether you agree or think that Black Lives Matter is what it really is, or if you think it's something oppressive or damaging, police reform is separate only because it's another like non-political issue. It's just like a fact that's trying to address like legitimate community concerns, especially in a place like Laramie, when it's like we don't have a lot of crime. We pride on ourselves on having a low crime rate. So you would think that we would be putting money that addresses the people that really need help in the community more so than just like giving the police more money and artillery and like sniper training and like terrorist training, which is like all of that training might be necessary, but like out of all the 50 states, I'm not really sure if we're on the top 25% of the ones that are going to get a terrorist attack anytime soon. But it's just, I think defund the police from Laramie Humans' perspective is reassessing what Laramie and Albany County needs, what the community is struggling the most with, and when the police are responding to these issues, if they're helping or hurting, which in a large rate is hurting because they're just incarcerating these people that don't have anywhere else to get help and don't have anywhere to turn to largely.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if everything that y'all are working towards happened, it would be better for everyone in Laramie, regardless of their political views, regardless of how they feel about Black Lives Matter, and so on and so on. I think that's just kind of an important salient kind of point, that this helps everybody, right?
Yeah, and it's hard. That's like the weirdest part, I think, of all the backlash we get is like people take it personally. And even like what motivated Billy to get involved, it's like these demonstrations happening across the nation were like personally impacting people here. And it's like, I don't know. I don't understand where the disconnect of like, this is an issue that's addressing a demographic, one, that you don't belong to, and two, if the issue was solved, it wouldn't make your life any harder. Like, it's not like we're flipping the switch, right? Like, we're just making it an equitable system, or attempting to. And so, those conversations are really hard to have, because it's like, I don't even know where to start. Like, this isn't personal for you, especially. Like, let's take a few steps back. But I think it's a whole hogwash of those maybe implicit biases that really plague people, and they don't even realize it. They just feel this like anger and irritation towards an idea that they don't quite grasp.
And some of it's willful too. Like we've talked to a couple people who like just deny that the criminal justice system is kind of slanted against individuals of color, and specifically Black individuals. So, I mean, that's always a steeper hill to climb, but in a community like Laramie, it's definitely present.
Totally. So you gave us the behind the scenes on how this all came together this summer, and how you both kind of, it just happened is I guess the best way I could sum it up quickly. What got either of you individually started in thinking about either activism or trying to make positive social changes, however you want to frame it? Was there something before? Was there a moment or anything, or is this it?
Yeah, primarily this was kind of my first venture into any sort of activism. I had like protested in like the March for Our Lives movement before, not in like an organization or organizing capacity, but I've always been, I feel like, sort of conscious about these sort of issues and not necessarily putting any work into them. And I think it was, it got to a boiling point where I felt like I kind of had to. I felt like I needed to. So that was kind of the process for me. Not a lot of history on my end, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have too much. Going to the university, I was the president of the Black Student Alliance, and so I definitely did some more lower scale organizing in that capacity, and did a few marches of things with like MLK Days of Dialogue and things of that capacity. And then, like I said, sort of using my university connections that I'd organized with in a different worlds. When this summer happened, I was just sort of like reaching out to them individually and being like, what the heck do we do? Like, I just graduated, and so I was sort of like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what facet. I'd never like not been attached to an institution, like doing any type of organizing. And so it was sort of freeing being like, I can just do whatever, I guess, and like not worry about any repercussions. And it was also, I think it helped open up and get us access to a larger part of the community that's not very UW affiliated or, intricately connected to it. But other than that, yeah, this was like the first, I think, freehand like organizing that I've ever done. And it's obviously like grown well beyond my imagination of what it ever would have been. I didn't even want to have a name for a group. And so obviously like we're a lot bigger now, and that's it's riveting. But yeah, I was really just a student, just hanging out, not enjoying Laramie. Probably being Black is what motivated me the most. I was like, this place is rampant with racism. I'm just, but it's also like totally saturated in like a solid community of people who, like, even though we might not face all of these issues every day that you see on the news, and especially in terms of police brutality, like you don't see many cases, you don't see Laramie hardly on the news at all, but that understand, the criminal justice system and the flaws within it, and the disproportionate impact it has on different demographics, even if it's the 1% that live in Wyoming. That's definitely what motivated me. I think just the experiences that I've had through my times living here. I'm not from Laramie, so I've only lived here for about 5 years now. Billy's basically from Laramie, and so he's definitely two different perspectives, but of a very similar issue. Has been really beneficial, I think, to our success and our motivation for like keeping this organization going, because we have different perspectives on things, but also like a very, I think, intricate understanding of how systems work, and my history in a different place and his history here, like coming together, makes it work well, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're still going.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you both have mentioned, taking part, at least participating in some past marches that have happened in town. But this is obviously so much different. And I think it's you two, it's the other folks in Laramie Humans. It's a different thing when you got people that are going to dedicate themselves and be there day in, day out for it. I'm sure it's more work than I could ever even imagine just thinking about it from the pieces you've given me. and I know, there's the work people see, there's the work people don't see, but something I don't think gets talked about enough when we talk to activists or, read a book by one or anything else, is realizing that that the self-care piece has to be there to do all those others. So I want to just highlight that for a second so students can hear that a bit from you too. Because I'm sure you wouldn't be still going this long if you weren't doing some self-care along the way. So I'm just curious, like, how do you take care of yourselves with all this? It seems like a really stressful thing.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's been
$1 million question.
Yeah, we've dropped the ball on it a few times. Yeah. Definitely run out of steam. But I mean, one thing we've taken advantage of having this like super intimate group that meets on the daily. We've taken our work and just like gone up to View and camped for a night, and
it also helps that the group of people we kind of formed, we're all like really good friends as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like when we're meeting we're not doing but we're not. It doesn't feel like we're doing work.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's also nice. Working with people you like makes it a little easier. But I like external self-care. It really sort of it's this group of the Laramie humans, like the core group that we consider now, it sort of seems to me like I'm either working with them or I'm like hanging out with them, doing like a little bit of work while we're hanging out, but like maybe doing it in a park or something. But other than that, I took a vacation, which like no one else has yet, but I had an opportunity I had to take. So that definitely helped with my self-care. But I was still, even on vacation, every time I had signal, I'd be like running, seeing what's going on. But it's a lot of just like giving yourself a time to stop talking about work, whether it's an 8 to 5, it's usually like an 8 to midnight sort of thing of us just like communicating in some capacity about what's going on, and then it's like midnight hits, we should probably go to bed, but like maybe we'll watch TV or something. So tons of that, and I don't know, we all work. That's like a popular, I think that's like contrary to popular belief. When people are yelling at us, like, go get a job. We all have jobs. So my job and Billy's job are extremely supportive of what we do. So those environments are, at least for me personally, like really nice to go into. And like, even if though I'm doing work, it's just nice to be around people who like aren't, giving me dirty looks or like looking at me like I'm insane. And just sort of able to relax in those capacities. But obviously probably not self-care. I'm just like a workaholic. I always want to.
Kind of the same way.
But
we're not the best at that.
Yeah, self-care is hard. It's hard, but it's also like so satisfying to like see the work that you've been working towards. Just like any like smallest fragment of success is just like invigorating. It's intoxicating. It's like, I'm talking about success, not in a monetary form. Billy said I sound like a capitalist in case the microphone didn't catch that. But no, it's I don't know, it's refreshing to like be doing this work, facing the intense criticism that you face and the backlash you get, and then like getting a smidge of like your concerns addressed by anyone in power is like, oh my God, like, we could really do this. And that's really motivating, and like is self-care to an extent, because it's like, it doesn't feel like you're just yelling into an abyss, but you're like, doing some type of constructive work. But self-care is important. Do better than we have with it is all I can say to students.
And that's why I bring it up, because it's tough. But yeah, we got to get it in there when we can.
Right.
And yeah, the get a job thing, I just don't get, right? Like it's hard to organize a whole march and like have stuff going on out in the street. Like it's easy to drive by and yell. Like, so
I think we should be commending us, because like I just got off of my full-time job, and
they're also not at work.
They're not working. Right.
Like,
exactly.
Not working 24 hours a day. Like, I don't know if they just love capitalism, where they're like, everyone should be working all the time. But that's not what we're about. And yeah, it's like the funniest thing, because that's like, I think the most common, like, just shouting that we've heard from anyone. any
not like
any
the F word or
demonstration we're
something.
at, it's literally just like, go get a job. And it's like, where would the conversation go if we like met and you would know that we had jobs?
Yeah.
Like, what else would you say to us?
Yeah, it's like the free spot on the counter protester bingo card is just get a job. I'm curious, I'm sure your whole plate is full right now with the immediate here and now. But I'm just curious if you have thoughts of, what does this look like long-term for you all? Is this, and I'm talking individually, not necessarily part of the organization, is a career related to this in the cards for you all, or is this something that you just, do with that? Or what are your kind of goals? Not necessarily what you want to take from this specifically, but where do you see yourselves going?
Well, I was a sociology major, and I have like a blurb in a bio in some site on the
It was
UW
like your
thing.
graduation.
My graduation
bio,
bio was like, I'm a fan of
productive
civil disobedience.
disobedience.
So, I sort of, that one was sort of written in the
stars.
stone. Yeah. But nonprofit work has sort of always been my interest, and so I definitely didn't plan on living in Laramie any longer than my undergrad took. And the perfect storm of really all of this, COVID hitting, the most unfortunate disaster, but also sort of put a lot of things in place that wouldn't have otherwise been. And so, I started basically what I wanted to do literally in any other place, just in Laramie. And so, for the time being, especially while COVID is doing its thing and sort of putting alternative plans on hold, like master's degree and fun things like that, I plan on staying in Laramie and just really working, trying to set a foundation for Laramie humans so that all of the people in everyone except us that works with us is in college right now. And so, ensuring that on the Laramie Humans side that this organization and the work that we're doing, the benefit that we're bringing to the community can last if all of us just up and leave one day. So making sure that that's a solid opportunity or an organization in Laramie, but individually, this is sort of what I've always wanted to do. And so I don't really know if there's any money for it anywhere, but it's cool to have a job that's supportive of it and that I can make a living from, especially in a place like Laramie with relatively cheap living. And also that needs it because we're not, even a place like Cheyenne that has the NAACP or the ACLU, sort of these organizations that talk about a whole hogwash of issues, but specifically criminal justice reform. This sort of seems like it's come to my attention. I think I've realized over the past few months that this isn't the place I wanted to live. I didn't really, not the biggest fan of 10 months of winter, but it's definitely the place that maybe needs something like this the most because no one was really talking about it before we started talking about it. And there's definitely, as we've done this work, and I think every day goes by, we learn about something new and some issue or something that just or individuals that, come to us and are we've been having these problems for months and years and we just never had anyone to help us. And I don't really know how much help we can provide to people. Yeah. We always try and then we hear people out and we give them all of the connections and advice that we can. But it does sort of seem like the place that maybe needs something like this. So I don't really have any other plans except for doing this kind of work and stirring the pot in Laramie as long as I can stand the winter.
I think an important thing too, just for the long-term continuation or success of Laramie Humans is we've always had the idea, we're not pigeonholing it to be any one certain thing or one certain expression of ideas. We've kind of always been open to changing it into whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's helped a lot in maintaining the momentum that we've had so far. So I think keeping that ideology intact is going to be really important. As far as now we're reaching out and kind of having a collection of community organizations and seeing what we can do for like community members in need of assistance in that way. So, yeah, I think long term, definitely Laramie Humans is it.
Cool.
But you're personal.
Yeah.
You're dedicating your life to Laramie
Well,
Humans.
for now.
Wow.
You already knew that. But yeah, I'm also interested in going to grad school, but obviously COVID's kind of throwing a halt on those plans. So I'm from Laramie. I've lived here for like 22 years, so I can bear a little bit longer.
It's rough. It's
every
really
winter
rough.
it gets colder, I think. I don't know. The numbers don't show it, but I feel it every winter. I'm like, I never felt this level of cold before.
Yeah, and it's coming earlier and it's staying later. June and September snowstorms this year. We had a couple months there that it was nice, but that was it.
But Laramie Humans will persevere.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool that a few months into an organization's existence, you're talking about sustainability and making sure that it's something that persists. I think that says a lot about you two and about the organization also. I really appreciate the kind of DIY attitude of like, we're just going to do this and here it comes. We're going to, because I think those are all the best things, the best organizations. I mean, anyone can sit down and like come up with a business plan for a nonprofit or whatever else and like design it, like over design it, right? And put so much thought into it. But I think just people that care working are the ones that get stuff done. And that's what I'm seeing is just people that like care about what they're doing and are willing to put in the work. And I think it's going to be really cool to see, just see what happens next. So kind of the question you're probably waiting on, we want to get some more folks involved, get them connected with you. So somebody's interested, they go, I want to check this out. What do they do? Where do they go?
We are so official optically. It's insane. I'm like, don't take our website. Billy's like an art major. So all of our online persona is Billy. It looks very nice. But we have Facebook and Instagram and a Twitter. I always forget about the Twitter and a website. We're everywhere.
Laramie Humans. So it's at Laramie Humans on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or facebook.com/Laramie Humans, and then LaramieHumans.org.
LaramieHumans.org.
And then on there, and I think on all of our social media platforms, you can find our email at contact@LaramieHumans.org. And then we also have a P.O. box that we just set up. I don't know the address to it, but if you want to send us like snail mail, we love it. And we will post that P.O. box number sometime. Yeah, it'll be there. See, this is what's behind the scenes.
Yeah, it is.
The DIY part is literally, we have no idea what we're doing. But and then if you, which happens like more, well, it's a small town, probably not more often than you think, but if you ever just see us out at like a coffee shop and you see the person with purple hair or the guy with long hair, that's us, and you can talk to us and see what's up. But I think that's all the ways. We answer all of like, if you ever DM any of our social media or like use the portal on the website, it's gonna go to us or any of the other 5 people. And like I said, we meet daily. We're in each other's ears like worms. So it'll get around to where it needs to get around to.
Cool. Yeah. It seems like, it's working, right? So like, what do we need to change? You're getting folks.
Exactly.
Biggest thing I've been here about 5 years too. And, I've seen a handful of marches and been in some, and this is different, right? This is a lot different. And this is really cool that you all are doing this and that everyone, that comes out there with you is showing up. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want to tell folks about Laramie Humans, or anything folks need to know before we wrap it up here?
Just that Laramie Humans is what we say we are in terms of being a human rights network. So even though our focus right now seems to be on criminal justice reform, we really are dedicated and passionate about all social ills, especially ones that disproportionately impact impoverished people or people of color. We're also very into sustainability efforts and recycling. And so really, if people like think that we're their cup of tea, or maybe we're not like directly related to their cup of tea, reach out to us. Like, there's a whole bunch of people behind, beside Billy and I, behind being like not in this Zoom call, but that all have super intricate and well built like interests and sets of skills that blow my mind every single day to work with. And so we're really here to address any and all issues that people face or see as an issue in Laramie and Albany County. So if anyone wants to get involved, or just wants to sort of pick our brain about a thing, or wants us to pick their brain about a thing, and sort of talk about grassroots movements starting, or just working together and expanding sort of at least the optics of what we're working on, and bringing some of these things that we care about into the light more, reach out. We're cool people, I think, and we started this like solely based on like we're listening and talking to the community, and like gonna let the people that are not us, let those words be heard. And so I think we're still standing by that sentiment, and obviously just like doing it in a much more low-key capacity, because with COVID, that's, Zoom calls are the future, what we've been probably organizing most with. So if anybody is also like doesn't understand or is against what we're standing for, reach out to us as well, and like we'll pick your brain about that, and we'll explain all these things, because we're just a bunch of Laramie humans who care about other Laramie humans, and that's all we'll ever do.
Sounds like a tag.
I was gonna say that was pretty good. I should.
Yeah, that was like the moment. That was I should have been ready to end it. That was it. I'll just say again, I think what you two are doing is awesome. It's obviously working. It's obviously resonating with people in town. So hopefully more and more students, as they come back to town and maybe didn't know what was going on in the summer, can kind of get connected or hooked in there. Once again, folks watching, if you didn't catch it, Timberly Vogel, Billy Harris, Laramie Human Rights Network. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you both for your time.
Thanks so much.
Richard.